face that everyone knows, and you talk about, and even now we hear stories of, you know, bumping into and we knew we didn't get to really do anything in a timely fashion because you were moving on to some other things very quickly. But thank you so much for being here tonight so we can take a moment to honor you. So the first thing I want to do is we do have something to read from the Board of Selectmen, and I'm going to let Glenn go ahead and read that. So this is a proclamation from the Board of Selectmen on behalf of...
Hi, Holly.
Hello.
How are you?
Good.
All right. So, as Chris said, this is a proclamation from the Select Board, and it reads, whereas Holly Willett was Deputy Town Clerk for the Town of Kingston for 45 years and was always a great source of local knowledge, and whereas Holly was a dedicated member of the Kingston Days Committee since 1990, volunteering tirelessly and receiving a dedication in the 2018 program book, and whereas, and by the way, if any of this is wrong, don't say so now. Tell us later. Whereas Holly has been a member of the Lions Club. Lions Club? There you go. Since 1988, and also a past president, and has led a successful drive to collect plastic bags that are made into park benches. And whereas Holly is a past member of several other town committees, including the Heritage Commission and the Kingston Lake Association. Kingston Lake Association, there we go. And given of her time in numerous capacities. And whereas such dedication and generosity are rare and valued traits, and the town of Kingston is indebted to Ms. Willett for her many years of service and her great knowledge of and caring for the town and its people. Now therefore, we, the selectmen of the town of Kingston, New Hampshire, by virtue of the authority vested in us, do hereby offer heartfelt gratitude for Holly's service to the town of Kingston and wish her many years of happiness in her well-deserved retirement. And it's signed by currently 4 members of the board. We'll get the 5th one to sign it, and then we'll give you the certificate.
Perfect.
And awarded to to Holly Willett. On the occasion of her retirement as the Deputy Town Clerk, during her time as a town official, Holly has worked to keep the best interests of the town a priority, ensuring the residents she serves are well informed on the benefits and services the town offers and helping them along the way. In addition to her official duties, Holly is also an active member of many community groups and organizations, including the Lions Club, Kingston Days Committee, the Heritage Commission, the Kingston Lake Association. On behalf of the citizens of New Hampshire, I commend Holly for her many years of public service and the positive impact she has had on our community, and wish her all the best in a much-deserved retirement. Christopher T. Sununu, Governor.
Thank you. Thank you so much. You have to push that.
No, As long as it's green, you're good.
Thank you, folks, for all being here. I love you all, and I always loved serving the public for Kingston and surrounding towns, because I mean we did decals for East Kingston and wherever they came from, boat registrations, everything, and our Lions Club and Pollinator Pathways folks are here too today, and Evie just came in at Pollinators. Hi. And yep, and we've had so many different committees that we're on and that we're doing, and the Lions Club, we just actually, Scotty West and I, we just brought a bench over to Fremont Town Hall for the plastic that we had a new bench made. So it's all there and ready to use and everything. So I'd like to thank everybody for coming out and taking this time to be here. Thank you very much. And I always said I'd be here 50 years, which I only was 46, that Betty had a bench over here, Ma, that I'd have a bench on the other side. Well, I missed the 50 years. Oh, well. So no bench for no bench for me. Oh, well, thank you for coming.
We wanted to give people an opportunity to speak and congratulate Holly on her dedicated service, and thanks.
And there's
Absolutely. All right, everyone, we are going to return from our recess. Thank you for indulging us. That was a great opportunity to be in this room with people being happy. This hearing is, we received an unnamed road at the north end of the Plains, required to be named Elaine Van Dyke Way. Just so folks understand how we got to this. The select board has the authority when it comes to naming roads in town, other than state highways and state roads. So the select board was given a proposal. We felt that the most appropriate way to handle this would be through a public hearing, and here we are this evening. So the way this will move is we will have the applicant or that generated the proposal, we'll have them come up. Are you prepared for that? Okay. Come up, explain your rationale and your reasoning behind that proposal, and then we will go ahead, and because it is a public hearing, we'll open it up to comment and give anyone an opportunity to speak at this public hearing. So, and just and anyone that comes up, you're going to have to state your name, your address, so we can get it for the record, and then go ahead and proceed with any comments you may have.
Jeff Flanders McDougall, Main Street, Kingston. Some of you may have known Elaine Van Dyke, but all of us were impacted by her generosity. Elaine was a compassionate and avid community volunteer and supporter of our town for almost 40 years, having moved to Kingston in 1983. Her volunteer efforts in Kingston included being a member and later chair of the Recreation Commission. She served as a director before there was a director, planning all events, including the summer youth program. She hired and trained the staff, scheduled the field trips, etc., along with other year-long events for residents. She was a member of the Heritage Commission and a trustee of the Kingston Community Library. When the museum's headquarters were moved into the Nichols Memorial Library, she was involved with the museum, and she headed the refreshments for the new history book sponsor party. For several years, Elaine cooked and served meals for the weekly Kingston senior lunches, and she personally cooked weekly meals for several Kingston residents over the years. She was a long-term member of the Kingston Business and Professional Women's Club and director of the Eastern District. Her volunteer efforts expanded beyond Kingston, with various nutrition councils, associations, and forums. Most importantly, she was a founding member of New Hampshire Hunger Solutions. She served for over 22 years as a court-appointed special advocate for children in the CASA program. I feel her actions and dedication to our town should be memorialized. I wish there was a building that we could name after her. I would welcome that opportunity. At the present time, as her home is close to the Plains, and there's a small unnamed roadway on the north end of the Plains, I'm requesting this be formally named Elaine Van Dyke Way. Elaine's service was exceptional. It was very extraordinary. I don't know how many of you know this, but she was a single parent. Her husband died when her child was 2.5 years old, but Elaine would never say, I'm a single parent. Elaine was a giver. She impacted so many lives, not only in Kingston, but surrounding Kingston. Her service was more than exemplary. I think this is a minor thing that we can do to say thank you to Elaine. Thank you.
Thank you. So, if so,
it is important to us. The Veterans Club is a sponsor for Wreaths Across America. This year on December 16th, our veteran teams will be placing a wreath on both ends of those streets, and we take a step back, and we salute each hero. Across the nation, wreaths will be placed to honor all of our fallen heroes. Our teams also place a wreath in honor of each of the services on a tripod at the entrance of the 4 cemeteries. Finally, we have a ceremony in front of the club and place a wreath in honor of each of our Veterans Club founders. The weather has never deterred us, and we're always encouraged the community to help with us. It's important to us. There are various organizations in this town dedicated to preserving open spaces in town. You can talk about Friends of the Kingston Open Space, Southeast Land Trust, Kingston Lake Association, maintaining the lakes, Powwow Pond Association. It's important to them. We are an organization dedicated not only to veteran issues, but also protecting the tradition in this town to name streets in the area of the Plains be reserved for fallen heroes. One of Mrs. Van Dyke's greatest legacies is New Hampshire Hunger Solutions helped to build and expand food coalitions throughout the state and provide healthy foods for breakfast and lunch in schools. In recognition of her work, New Hampshire Hunger Solutions created the Elaine Van Dyke Child Nutrition Champion Award, and it's given annually to a school or a food service director who improves their school breakfast participation at their district. She was a trustee of the Kingston Community Library, chair of the Kingston Recreation Commission, a member of the Kingston Heritage Committee, and she was on the Kingston Board of Trustees. Mrs. Van Dyke deserves to be recognized for her dedication and service. Perhaps an engraved granite bench placed at the library, next to the one we have for former library trustee Amy Esty. Perhaps create a scholarship in the name of Mrs. Van Dyke. The town has named and renamed states in the past. We ask you to find a different one. I implore you to stay with the tradition in this town to preserve the naming and renaming of the states of the streets in the area of the Plains be reserved for our fallen heroes. Do this in honor of them and in honor of our veterans. It should be as important to you as it is to us.
I'd like to add that the way we normally recognize people who've had a long service in the town is we dedicate the town report to them. I've been disappointed the last few years when Chief Briggs retired, his face wasn't on it. Representative Dave Welsh retired after 34 years, his name wasn't on it. I don't know why we've overlooked that. It used to be a big deal for the selectmen to figure out whose picture goes on the town report every year. So it would be appropriate to put Elaine Van Dyke on the next town report, because that's the way we usually recognize people that have had long periods of service. And I'm surprised we've overlooked it. We didn't have, I don't think we had Betty Willett on there. We should certainly have Holly Willett on there. But, you know, those things have gone by. I was going to send in a nomination, but I didn't get around to it when Dave Welch retired, as well as for Chief Briggs. So that's the proper way that through our history we have done it. We're here about traditions. I think we all are. So that would be the proper tradition, rather than naming a street, which we've always named after veterans who gave their full. So that's what I want to bring up.
I know who you are, but could you just state your name and address for the record?
Representative Ken Weiler, 23 Scotland Road.
No, this. Correct. So related to this issue. Any? Yeah.
live in Kingston, Phoenix Drive. I can't hear one word that's being said. I didn't hear Jeff. I didn't hear the Jim. And I think it's really hard to weigh in on something when you can't hear. I mean, I'm hearing impaired anyways, but it's, anything I have to say could probably be redundant, and you could all say, well, I'm very partial because we were friends for 37 years. She would probably be mortified to have somebody suggest having a street named after her. But I think she was a woman who dedicated her life to people, especially feeding people. She worked for the community, she worked for the state, Massachusetts. She expanded a lot of horizons that even at her funeral, it's like, I had no idea she did that. She was a humble person. She loved her flowers. She would help out with the things over here. She worked with diligence at a church to make sure they had meals over there for lunches for anybody who wanted to walk in. I think she just had a lot of integrity, humility, and was driven to do things, and I have respect for naming things after our veterans, but I don't see any reason why we can't recognize a citizen who worked tirelessly all her life, right up until she died, to help people. So I also want to know, is there a way of improving upon the sound? You have all your public speaking directed to you, but for people who can't hear, you can't hear from listening to somebody's back.
I wish we had a perfect solution, but this really is this is the
Anyway,
tremendous upgrade to what we had.
Thanks, and I mean, I'm sure you're going to make your decision either way, but I don't feel that there would be a big harm in naming an unnamed street after somebody who's dedicated a lot of her time to the town. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Please come forward.
Muriel Ingalls, 100 Main Street, Kingston. I think Elaine would be very upset to know that this was an issue, that the naming of this street became an issue and in controversy. I think it would make her absolutely miserable. So I think it's unfortunate that the naming of that street comes up against a rule or a law, whether we've had it that way for the veterans. That makes me sad. So I would charge the selectmen or the select board ladies, I would charge the select board to think about some way to honor Elaine that doesn't cause a controversy. She would be most unhappy in this situation. Thank you.
Any further? Seeing none, I'll open it up if the board wants to comment.
When Mrs. Flanders McDougall had brought up the question of naming the road in honor of Elaine's dedication to the community and to feeding people, it made a lot of sense to me, but I did not know that it's been our tradition to name the streets along the plains in the center of town for fallen veterans, and I guess I'd have to say I want to uphold that tradition. I don't know whose phone is buzzing, but...
It's Chief.
Oh, okay, thank you. Sorry, Chief. As a board, we talked a little bit earlier tonight saying that there are many members of our community that have given years and years of service. We honored Holly earlier tonight. Mr. Weiler, Representative Weiler, named other individuals that have not yet been named on the town report. We are guilty of having a wealth of talented, dedicated volunteers in this town. Granted, we're all in that same generation. I don't know where the 30-somethings are, but hopefully they'll get the message at some point that we need their help too. But we have a lot of people that devote a lot of time to the town. And my colleague, Mr. Koppelman, made a suggestion earlier, and we're gonna, I think, as a group, talk about that, is maybe we need a monument for volunteers. We need some way to recognize the people that provide hundreds of thousands of hours of service at no cost to us. They provide that out of the goodness of their hearts. And Elaine Van Dyke, whom I've known since she moved to town, certainly falls into that category. So I'm sorry I can't support her being, a street being named for her, but I would certainly support honoring her in some other way. We have to get creative, that's all.
So I guess my comments are is that as a veteran, I have always appreciated the naming of the crossroads on the plains. I always thought it was very unique. I thought it, that position of prominence. But what I want to reaffirm is that while I support maintaining the tradition of naming that for fallen veterans, I don't want that argument of this particular case to take away from the fact that we obviously have somebody here that is seeking to be honored that is absolutely worthy of recognition and honor. I just think there are many other ways that we could facilitate that, and having heard some of the concerns about wanting to maintain that tradition of fallen officers that are considered to be part of the Plains, I want to maintain that tradition, but I want to help also be an advocate to find an appropriate way to recognize and find something that the community and those petitioning forward for Elaine Van Dyke, that would be a great honor to her. And yes, talking about this recognition, earlier tonight with Holly, it was great to see, and we were just kind of having a little side conversation, and Glenn did bring up, maybe the town, because we are so bountiful and these long-term dedicated volunteers for our community, maybe we figure out a way to establish some very nice volunteer memorial that we could continue to add people to. And then there are other options if people want to take it a step further for that person. I just, at this time, I can't, as a veteran myself, and how I felt about seeing those streets named after fallen veterans, I just can't support breaking from that tradition at this time. Anyone else?
This is a tough one. I don't disagree at all with what Ms. Alessio or Mr. Bashaw said. To be honest, I probably didn't pay enough attention to know that it had been tradition to name the cross streets in the Plains for fallen veterans, fallen heroes. So, and what Muriel Ingalls said rings true as well, and that is that if Elaine were here and listening to us, she probably would not be happy about this division that's now starting to form. And so there's absolutely no question that Elaine deserves recognition by this town, and shame on us if we don't do something appropriate. However, I would probably fall on the side of Chris and Ellie that as far as the roadway is concerned, I think that's breaking a tradition that I wasn't aware of, and so I would probably follow in line with your thoughts on that. But I also want to make sure that we do some follow-up and make sure that we do the appropriate recognition for Elaine Van Dyke.
Anything further?
I haven't been in Kingston long. I am a proud Navy veteran, and Navy is filled with tradition. So I am all for maintaining that tradition. I didn't have the honor or pleasure of knowing Elaine, but she sounded like a very generous person. And I'm just going to second everybody's thoughts that we need to honor that, but in a different way.
Well, since everybody has their input, I kind of agree with Muriel. It's too bad that we're here and we're having to pit one against the other, you know, the military versus this Elaine, who has spent a lot of time in town and done a lot of things for the town. And I think that it is in our best interest to make sure that we do get something dedicated for her over the next year, or whatever programs we can come up with. But again, I was not aware that there was a particular issue with the crossroads being, you know, wanting to be under the military names, but also being a veteran, et cetera, that it probably is the right thing to do at this point.
Any further discussion from the board? Please come back up.
I just wanted to add that I'm also a misinformed resident. I've lived here for 38 years. I know that there are some streets. I did not know that we were exclusively naming them for veterans. Otherwise, I never would have proposed this. But I do feel that we do need to find a suitable memorial for Elaine, not something that's going to be a plaque someplace that in 6 years it'll get misplaced and somebody won't know where it is. But if you're going to have a monument and you add names to it, that would be a permanent thing that people would see. And you could say, oh, right, I remember this person, I remember that, oh yeah, remember this person did X, Y, and Z. I think that's a wonderful way to memorialize the numerous volunteers that have dedicated numerous hours to our community.
And maybe she'll be the catalyst. Maybe it could end up being the Elaine Van Dyke Volunteer Memorial of Kingston, to really set things in motion. But,
right.
you
well,
know,
I welcome your ideas.
Well, and we'd welcome yours as well as you think about this some more.
Okay.
If you have other thoughts, please let us know,
Thank you.
since you were the one who sort of initiated this and brought it forward.
Thank you.
any. Okay, so I'll make an uncomfortable motion, and I just want it to be known that this is not in any way, shape, or form against, the honor, the intended honoree here. So I will make a motion. The current naming the cross street on the plains to be unnamed cross street on the plains to be named Elaine Van Dyke Way.
Recognize people like Elaine Van Dyke in our community.
So moved. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The motion obviously carries. We will not be naming, but we absolutely recognize the need to honor all our volunteers and particularly make sure that we find an appropriate way to honor her.
Thank you, and I just want to add that we will be having a food drive at our cornhole tournament, which is on October 14th, and we'll be having a food drive named the Elaine Van Dyke Food Drive. So we'd love you to participate and help us. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, you'll have to bring it up during public comment, which we have 2 appointments first, and then we can have you bring it up during public comment. So,
Good evening. I turned in a request for hire form.
Has the board had an opportunity to see this? Because I think in order to discuss details, we'd probably have to go into non-public. But
yeah, I was going to ask that.
Wants to take a look at it. I know the chief has brought this up. What's that?
Have you seen it?
I have. So to just give a little backstory, this is filling a position. He had one of his full-time patrolmen retire, and he's looking to fill that position. Based off of the salary of the patrolman that retired, he had up to a certain amount within his budget to look at for hiring based on years of experience. So I guess without saying the name of the person, could you just give us a little background on years of service and experience?
Sure. We got a certified full-time police officer. He was certified in 2001. He was part-time in 2019 to 2001. So he has some experience, something that we really could use in the town of Kingston. We have a lot of young officers. I didn't want to go with a new hire and put somebody through the academy. It just takes up too much time, and it's financially draining. So I got lucky, and I got a really good kid.
Okay. I will say I've discussed this with the chief. I did look at the budget. He's well within the budget. The current rate of pay of the other individual was almost 30, almost, yeah, I was going to say, okay.
So I'm requesting 25.
So this is less than the person that
About
Vacated.
$15,000 less.
the person's replacing.
Yes.
Any further discussion by the board? That we authorize to hire the patrolman at the rate of $29.25 an hour as recommended by the chief of police. Any further discussion? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Very good, thank you. Do you want me to stay for non-public, or? No, just for the giving you the name officially. We can read it. Okay, very good. Thank you. Have a great night.
Okay, our next. Yep.
So our waste oil furnace, that is the impetus for our waste oil collection process, is kaput. It had gotten a repair on it about 10 years ago that had a warranty of 5 minutes, and it's served us well in that time, but we are going to need a new one. So the state does have a waste oil grant program that allows us to apply for everything from a new waste oil furnace to just anything to improve our waste oil collection program. In this instance, I believe we'll be eligible for up to $2,500 to defray the costs. I don't know if the quote is in there that you guys...
Looks like we have a cost of $16,325.
Yes.
What percentage does the grant pay? Or is it a full?
It's just a $2,500 is the max
Okay.
amount that they'll offer.
Where's the rest going to come from?
So we do have a building capital reserve fund, and although it's been used for historical purposes up to this point, it is intended to help defray the cost of some of these emergency expenditures. So this is something that it would be designed for. We do have money in the capital improvement line item, but I was planning on utilizing that for the Grace Daily Barn pieces and parts to kind of get that together, so it wouldn't be coming to you guys for every part of that. So since this is a large one-time expenditure, it would be my intention to try and pull that from the reserve fund.
Do we happen to know the current balance on the reserve fund?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Paula? What is the difference for the grant? I was just trying to look through that.
It is items stating that whoever is going to sign for it. So I signed the get the ball rolling because I was told it would take a while. But if we are approved for it, there just needs to be a thing in there that says the person who would sign for the grant is authorized to do so.
The only heat for
So there is a backup regular oil furnace, but it is very old, very inefficient, and obviously defeats the purpose of having waste oil collection.
So I support this. I would just, before we took an official vote on it, authorizing me to sign off and essentially commit the town on our behalf, I would feel more comfortable if just for the next, if we could table this till next meeting, and that way we just know the fund balance and those type of items from the capital reserve. I'm sure there's enough money there, but I just would like us to have that knowledge. But
yeah, I believe there's $100,000 in there. It's more than enough to cover this, but yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I mean, how does the board feel? I mean, we obviously have a large balance in there. I know we're working on some ARPA funding projects to make some repairs at the town hall, but the purpose of that capital fund is specifically for building maintenance.
Do we have to go back to the voters to ask to withdraw monies from that fund?
No, the selectmen are agents to expend on that.
And I would say, I think in the past it appears the select board has recommended that certain ones go out to warrant article, but I'd feel comfortable supporting this. This is a town building that's used every single day, vital to operations, and obviously if we're collecting waste oil and then we can't burn it as fuel, we're gonna have to pay to dispose of it at some point.
I assume this is for new equipment?
It is.
Okay.
So having heard that the grant takes a while, it's really hard to find vendors who service that. So our new contract with Dowling, they don't deal with waste oil furnaces a lot. They do have a guy on staff, so they're trying to get us a number, but this is from our previous maintenance contract provider. So we got 2 quotes for 2 different size systems, and we're pending a second quote from Dowling. They will provide that for us, but I just wanted to get the ball rolling because I had heard this grant takes a long time.
So at this point, we have a price from one?
Yes.
Okay.
One vendor for 2 different sizes. So the size we had, they don't make that anymore, so they offered us the smaller one or the bigger one. We went with the bigger one just because of the volume, because of the use of that. It's typically where we thaw trucks out, you know, during large storms, just to kind of keep them rolling, and that's where we work on all the vehicles.
Is there a significant difference in price between the small and the large?
There's about $5,000 difference.
Okay.
But you're talking a 200,000 BTU versus a 350,000 BTU, so we're getting bang for our buck with that. The nice thing with the oil program is, since I've come on board, we've made a few connections with some other, John's Truck and Auto can provide us any of the shortfalls. So this year we didn't use any fuel oil at all. We used purely waste oil to heat with. And that's been my target goal, is to generate enough waste oil through the program, but if not, we have other sources that we can pull from where we're not buying oil to heat that barn at least.
Do you think you'd be able to have another quote by next week? Will that other quote be in? I think I'd really like just to see 2
absolutely.
quotes. Yep. 2 weeks, okay. So if we can wait, I understand that, you know, the grant could take a long time, but us deciding tonight probably isn't going to speed up the grant too much.
No, and it's not the end of the world. I mean, like I said, we have backup heat, so, you know, we'll survive. I just want to, like I said, the grant has a long lead time, so I just want to make sure we started the process on that.
And it'll also give us time to get an exact number on what's in the reserve fund. I mean, that I think we should have before the decision is made. I mean, the only other question, and it's probably not really a question, but I think we need to know what the opportunity cost is. In other words, if we choose to do this, taking that money out of there, does it take away from something else that those funds were planned to be used for? And you'd be the best one to know the answer to that.
And I would say, so we have a moose plate grant for the Grace Daily Barn, and I'm working very diligently to keep it within the capital reserve budget number, or not the capital reserve, the capital expense budget line item in the municipal properties built budget. So this really is the only thing we'll be pulling out of there in the foreseeable future. This roof, a couple of the other roofs are things that I'm keeping an eye on, but I'm not aware of anything that's coming up.
And the work that we were talking about as far as the repair of the steps, and possibly some HVAC upgrades. We were talking about that as ARPA funding, right?
Correct.
So not taking it from that fund.
Correct.
Okay.
And I think this is something, you know, if we wanted to look at that, you know, once we get the engineering drawings and we have to make the decision what we're gonna actually fund with what's left from ARPA, this is a source we could pull from, but again, that would be nothing of the emergency category.
Okay, so the board comfortable, we'll put this on our next meeting, and we hopefully have some additional quotes by then, and we'll have the exact fund balance so we can make a educated decision.
Yep.
Thank you. All right.
Hi, Pam Brown, 23 Sunshine Drive. Speaking about Kingston Days for next year again, I'd ask that we move Kingston Days back to our traditional August weekend. At your last meeting, I explained that this year's attendance during the September weekend was quite a bit lower than previous years, and I saw a lot of young people were missing. It was after Labor Day, and it also impacted our fundraising at our tent. I noted we're competing with the Hampton's massive seafood festival and the Pease Air Show. Kingston Days committee members at your last meeting insisted the event was a success, but as I recall, they also had concerns about difficulty of finding major sponsors for Kingston Days this year at one of their Thursday meetings. And also the car show was missing, which is a huge draw for Kingston Days. That definitely impacted attendance. The Hampton Seafood Festival, I think, caused us to lose a lot of vendors, sponsors, and attendees because it took place again the same weekend of our September Kingston Days. With 80,000 attendees, and say you're a food truck operator or an arts and crafts person, which event would you go to? Would you go to the Seafood Festival, or would you go to the Kingston Days? I think the festival in Hampton would be much more profitable for someone. Selectman Alessio at your last meeting suggested that September seemed fine and people can go to both, but people can't devote 3 full days to going to both events. It's quite a lot to do, so I think they're going to pick one. And so I guess my point would be, why compete when our traditional August weekend has worked out and we have that available? So please have us return to the August dates. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, I'm Representative Lily Walsh. I actually live in Hampstead, but I'm the chair of the Hampstead-Kingston Republican Committee. And I can attest that our raffle sales were down 30% this year. And I directly attribute it to the move of the Kingston Days from August to September. Many of the people that came by talked about how, you know, they went to the seafood festival and they just happened to remember that the Kingston Days got moved, so they still wanted to come to see us, but we noticed that it was dramatically down. And also we noticed a lack of a lot of the kids that would come by usually by our tents. So it was my understanding that it was moved primarily because of weather, although we had some pretty wild weather that Representative Weiler and I experienced while we were trying to set up our tent. It actually lifted me off the ground. It was a Mary Poppins moment. And then it was still hot. So I think we all can agree New England weather is unpredictable, and whether it's August or September, I don't know if it's worth changing it just for weather reasons. It was definitely a lot more popular. People that we talked to who live in nearby towns were confused, saying that we came around at the beginning of August thinking that we were going to go to Kingston Days and we saw nothing was happening. So it has messed up other towns as well, as far as Hampstead, Danville, Fremont, that love to frequent Kingston Days. So I humbly ask that you consider, and the committee, Kingston Days Committee, also reconsider bringing it back to August. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Ken Weiler, 23 Scotland Road. I've been involved with Kingston Days since it started in 1990, either as a Mason or as a Republican or some other event. And we always had within the same few feet, the same space, under a tree, looking at the big tent. We were very disappointed to get moved to the other area that was normally a car show or flea market. And we didn't think that we got as much traffic where we got moved, and they didn't see a real good reason to move it. And it didn't, I was disappointed. It didn't seem to be well organized. We moved twice. We were the whole width of the display area, and they weren't consulted. They expected to have that first weekend in August, and we're kind of surprised when it didn't happen. So that didn't seem to be as well. To sit down and consult with those people very much. So it was always wasn't as well. The participant committee didn't seem to consult with previous years, and when I tried to say something to the woman that said she was the chair, she kind of brushed me off. And I mean, especially having been somebody involved, I thought I had something to contribute, where she's new in the job. So I was disappointed, but hopefully you can have some influence on next year, and I mean, it ought to be a decision by our elected officials rather than appointed ones. So, thank you.
Thank you. And I do agree, you know, we have a lot of influence as the elected officials, but I think a lot of us had commented that we wanted to defer to what was being proposed by the people doing the work, doing the organizing, doing the volunteering, set it all up. So I know for me, that's a big part of it. And while I agree there was probably some hiccups, there seemed to be a big transition of the people involved over the years. And, you know, I say it all the time, there's only two, the way things are and change. And they're never happy with either one. So we let them make a decision, and I know me, it's whatever their suggestion is going to weigh heavily for me, because I'm not the one planning all year long and making those calls. But I did make some suggestions of things that I think could help vendors to, spreading out, putting more events on a, round the clock that would drive traffic through those areas if they're going to continue to have them there. Because I will say, there was limited events going on down past the vendor booths, so that probably limited some of the traffic. But I had just as many people come up to me this year saying, hey, we couldn't attend because it wasn't during the summer, but I had equally as many that came up to me and said, this is the first time we've ever gone because we're always away. And that was, my family being one of them. My family's never attended Kingston Days before because I would always come back for the car show on Sunday, but the rest of my family had never actually attended before because we're usually away on vacation that week. So I definitely appreciate this. This is one of those things, I don't think anyone's going to make anyone happy, but I'm going to defer to the recommendations of the people doing the work. So I would strongly, advocate at any of their meetings, as we were waiting for things to be finalized. But I know they're probably bringing some decisions to be made quickly to us to get their date set, because they're trying to lock in some of the vendors that need to be brought out ahead of time.
Should we attend their meeting to have input?
Absolutely. Public meetings.
Thank you again. We'd love to attend their meeting, and just something that maybe they didn't realize when they were planning it this year is the competition of other events in this general area. There was the Peas Air Show and the Seafood Festival, two huge draws that drew away from Kingston Days. So
I think that that's something for the committee to keep in mind, that if they are going to set another date, try to see what else is going on at the same time. Thank you.
This is New Hampshire. There's something every weekend from June 1st to October 31st. So there's always going to be a conflict. And I have to agree with our chairman, we got to rely on what the committee wants. They had a very successful event. And when you came to our last meeting, Ms. Brown, I know I talked with the chairman of the committee to say that you were not happy with the traffic flow, and they recognized that where you were down the end of the plains, there was a problem. And I bet if you go to one of their meetings, you'll see they're already working on changing that. So I just want you to be aware, we heard your concerns and conveyed them to the appropriate people, and hopefully can get resolved for next year.
I'd still suggest that you have a survey put out and see if any of the vendors actually went to the other events rather than ours, and see if they would prefer August. So, thanks so much.
Thank you. Any other? Okay, we will close. We have committee liaison reports. Lori?
And a half to 15 and a half vehicles, depending on how you measure that. But it was successful, and it was really just kind of getting the word out. People had a lot of questions that were showing up, and I don't think they were a lot of repeat people from the previous time. So I think it's just going to take some time. There is a social services meeting next week that I'm going to actually kind of call into because I'm out of town, but that's all I have.
Chuck?
Nothing. The only real information is the new schedule for the budget hearings and budget dates have been out and posted and sent to the department heads and the committees. And they've also been sent the budget, their worksheet budget to prepare. I'm not sure what date that's supposed to be back in, Paula? Today. And how's that working for us? Okay. Usually don't get them in on. One is the department, the rest are committees. Okay. So that's what we have there. They've got to get them in, and we're November 1st, I believe, is the first budget committee for the first group.
For my liaison report, with that retirement, that hire will put him back at full staff. The planning board, one of the kind of the Summit gas station, the planning board never received any requests for continuations. No appeals were done to the ZBA, so the planning board did deny that without prejudice. So that plan was denied due to the fact of no response and updates requesting any continuance from the applicant. So at this point, I don't know what other recourse they would have if they still want to pursue it, or they'd have to come back with a brand new application and they'd be subjected to all current ordinances and rules and regulations.
Plan, basically.
Yep. So that's all I have.
Okay. Recreation, I haven't talked with Paul recently, which is unusual because he's usually very communicative about things. But I read through some of his social, he's very active on social media, and I've seen some of his posts. And the playground, stepping stones down at, is it Como? Is that the location of it, Como Field? Has been refurbished and rededicated, and we talked about at one of our meetings a sign that he planned on putting out there, and I don't know if it's there yet, but it's going to recognize the fact that that upgrade was done due to the help of taxpayer dollars, as well as a significant contribution donation from one of our businesses in town, Partners Bank. So that was good to hear. There's lots of activities planned that the rec department is working on, and I'm not going to recite them because I don't know them all. Historic District Commission is having a joint meeting with Planning Board tomorrow night, so we'll see each other again. And that's the meeting where the Planning Board is going to be working on proposed zoning ordinance changes to go to warrant in March. And the reason that the Historic District Commission is meeting with them jointly is because there are some things that the two boards want to discuss about updating particularly the Historic District section of the ordinance and gaining some efficiencies and making some adjustments there. But the two boards are talking, and they're going to be doing it at a joint meeting tomorrow night. The Heritage Commission, Ernie, you might have to help me here. I don't, there's sort of ongoing planning for the 300th anniversary for the Plains Cemetery, I know that. And there's actually a steering committee now that's coming together around that. Is that correct? Yeah, okay. So that's ongoing. The museum committee is working on their October event, which is coming up in less than 2 weeks now, Saturday the 14th, so a week from this coming Saturday. And that's on the Plains. It will include a car, an open invite car show as part of it, as well as a bunch of other activities. I believe there's alcohol being served at this one, so there will be, who knows. So that event is happening, and they're actively working on that. They're anxiously waiting for the installation of the heating system at Nichols, and I don't know if Phil has any update on that, but I believe we're right around the time when that's supposed to be happening. Okay, so we're going from an oil furnace to a propane furnace, the oil tank has been removed, the old furnace has been removed, all the pipes have been disconnected and the pipes drained, and so now it's, the replacement furnace is a propane furnace that's in place, but it needs now to be hooked up to all of the infrastructure, and it required propane on site, and DPW director just said that the propane, so we're making progress. I think that's it.
Well, I didn't have any meetings this past week, so I don't really have anything to report, but the Wage Matrix Committee
That won't stop you.
No, it won't. But the Wage Matrix Committee is meeting this week and will continue its work accordingly.
Okay, we'll move on to, Susan, did you have anything? No, okay. Move on to old business, the Fairgrounds Committee formation. Phil, you want to come up and speak to that?
Met with Chief Pellerin today, just to kind of lay out some parameters for the fairgrounds use study group. And what we were looking at is having the fire chief, the rec department, the public works, 2 residents with 1 from the Folly Brook neighborhood, and 1 Board of Selectmen representative. The intention would be for this to be a 6-month study group to basically conduct a feasibility study of potential uses for the property, taking into account comparables in the area, doing cash projections of potential revenue and costs, coming up with phases of construction or potential phases of construction, staffing and detail requirements, insurance requirements, both on the town and the lessee, and then just the finances of it, whether this would be a revolving fund, an enterprise, and how that would be set up. So Those would be the parameters we'd be looking for. It wouldn't be one of these committees that just goes on forever. We would bring a report back to you in 6 months from the time of formation. So that was what we foresaw. No decisions would be made. It would just be merely to gather information and craft some proposals on the areas I just spoke about.
Any questions from the board? Follow-up?
Other than if we're going to do this, we probably should do a vote to actually form the committee.
Committee or a study group? Because we're not.
I'm sorry, wrong term.
Yeah, because I don't think we're going to look to officially appoint anyone. It would be kind of I think it would be.
Well, except that there are appointments because you were
Yeah.
talking about possible residents involved in it.
Correct. 2 residents.
Well,
But do they need official appointment by the select board, or would we leave it to the study group to come bring that, assemble that?
They should make recommendations to the select board is my guess, but they could.
I just worry that once we get into doing appointments and then it more becomes a committee and then they're going to be taking meeting minutes and it's going to be public hearings and not a study group, which I'm open to people having input, but I don't think they want to get watered down with a million different suggestions. I think they're looking, what are some recommendations we could bring forward?
I guess I'm questioning. I understand the need to kind of figure out what we need to do with that land, if anything. We do need to do that. I think a study group, a task force, maybe, not a committee, and certainly not anything formal, because 6 months brings us to March, April timeframe. So we'll sit on another year before we go to the voters to make any recommendations to them. So timing-wise, is this the right time to do that, or should we wait till the spring and do something next year? And I say that only because I'm thinking of how many things, it's going to be hard to get anything passed in March, and this is not going to go before any voters in March. So is the timing right now?
I think to do a study group, yes. I think because if you do a study group, then you hit that March, and if the information that comes out for that, and there's an appetite to explore it, then I think you appoint a formal committee to actually sit down, come with formal recommendations, the process that would be followed if we were going to engage, figuring out a way to better use the fairgrounds as maybe a potential revenue source for the town to rent out for events and what type of infrastructure may be needed. And I think then you formalize a committee to work on it, to bring something before the voters the following year to see if there's an appetite to do any type of investment into that.
So are you saying that at this point it's more of an ad hoc kind of a group?
Correct. So take a motion to a group comprised of the members he suggested, the Director of Public Works suggested, for informational purposes only, to discuss future possibilities in developing a committee in the future for use of the fairgrounds. Second. All right. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? There you have it.
Do you want me to get up and come back for the tree warden thing, or?
I suppose we could go out of order and just take the tree warden first while you're here.
As we're getting into the budget season, we had discussed this briefly and everybody was in favor of it until the money part came up. I feel this is an area we're kind of lacking as a town right now. This was a role that Rich had filled previously. I have neither the bandwidth nor the experience to fill this role. But I think it's something we're losing out on, a lot of potential revenue as far as yield taxes and timber harvests. We do not have a qualified individual going out and checking to make sure that people are being honest when they're submitting this paperwork, if they're even submitting it. So I do think it would be worthwhile for us to engage someone in this role to kind of protect the town's assets in that regard. That's not specifically spelled out in the RSA, but I do, it is the selectman's prerogative to expand the role or minimize it as they see fit. So I don't know if the board wants me to continue pursuing this, or we kind of left it in the air last time.
I think it needs to be pursued, but because I think some of the pitfalls the towns ran into in the past is we just went ahead and did stuff and there's no tracking. So if we don't have funding to pay somebody to engage in that, I think that's problematic. And when we have a budget committee that's talking about flatlining the budget, which I don't know what they've decided they're cutting yet to come in at 0%, I think there's a lot of, but I think it's absolutely worth pursuing and should be brought up and advocated for during the budgeting process, because I do think we need somebody in that role.
Could an option be to seek someone from the community who might have that background, who'd be willing to do it as a volunteer appointment?
Certainly, but part of the role is managing trees in the right-of-way. So that is one of the things that Sean Clow, who works for the Public Works Department, handles now, kind of in a unofficial capacity. But certainly if there's someone more qualified out there and they would do it for free, I think that was what was done in the past, and people would realize how much work was with it. I talked to Rick Center, who used to do it, and he was like, yeah, they wanted me to work like every other day and I was not getting paid, so I stopped. And that's kind of where that became yet another job Rich took on. And I was under the impression he was paid for that. I don't know when that got changed or if that was part of compensation that was rolled into his salary at some point along the way. I know Paul had looked into it and it wasn't explicitly spelled out, so it wasn't a line item. But I think, to your point, to do this properly and make sure that it's a role no different than the animal control officer, I think it's something that the town needs to have in place for a lot of reasons. But I'm, with the board's permission, I was going to pursue that through the budget process and come up with, you know, a stipend to go with the role. Not anything extravagant, but just, it's going to be work beyond what this person's daily duties are currently.
No, and I agree it needs to be done properly, but it just, and I don't think anyone should be working for free for important stuff like that, where it could put the town at liability if we don't handle it correctly. So we just need to make sure we have appropriate funding mechanism to pay for it. So I would say we absolutely need to be advocating for that during this budget process.
Okay. I got anything else you guys need me for? Nope.
You want to talk about the tree you planted?
Oh, trees planted. Beautiful Japanese maple. Glenn got a killer deal on it, and seems to be settling in nicely.
So for those that may not know, it's a memorial tree that being planted in honor of Joe Thompson. And we're going to be coming up with some type of physical monument that'll go with the tree that we'll work on getting in this spring, and then we can do a dedication to his family. So thank you for your work on that. All right, next old business item is the 2024 dates for Kingston Days.
Stacy Dion, Chair of Kingston Days. We have heard back from Rockwell, and they are interested in coming back for the proposed dates of September 6th, 7th, and 8th. Rockwell Amusements, that's what we were waiting for. Yep.
Does that fall on Columbus weekend?
No.
No,
Oh, you said
Labor Day, the weekend after.
I thought you said
September.
I thought you just said October.
Did I say? I said September.
You might have.
I don't know. It's late. September 6th, 7th, and 8th were the dates that I proposed at the last meeting. Correct.
had some feedback from vendors and inquiries from other new vendors that wanted to participate that weekend, is that correct?
That's correct. All of our food vendors, a lot of our vendors that came in all wanted to, I've gotten emails wanting to put their application in for the same weekend next year.
Sorry, I'm just looking up some other events just to.
Did you get any more feedback on numbers of people?
Yeah, we're still waiting for a few bills to come in, but it looks like we'll be around between $10,000 and $11,000 profit.
Very good.
And just for the benefit of us, me, and
Yep.
maybe others listening, how does that compare to prior years?
This will be the first year in a few years that that Kingston Days has turned a profit. And in previous years, it has been between $2,000 and $3,000.
Okay. And if I may, for the benefit of the folks who were here earlier before you, would you care to talk about some of the things you're thinking about with regard to layout and logistics, or would you rather wait until they attend a meeting with you?
We have a new committee that we're going to start with November 16th. There will be we are going to invite people to join the committee. We are all up to changing anything that worked or did not work for next year. We did a lessons learned. We have a lot of great ideas. The committee's still going back and forth with things we would like to see next year, additions we would like to see. We just want to make sure we get the dates and get a few of the vendors locked in so that we don't have the same issue. We also would want to go after sponsors. Some of the sponsors last year, because we came out, they didn't put it in their budget. So we want to get to them before budget season starts. So we want to send those before the January 1st.
Just as a thought, is it reasonable to think, or maybe we would want to put a warrant article in, as we did with the one-way traffic for around the plains, as to how people feel about the dates of the time,
If we have to wait until March?
No, you do what you, I'm not, if they did it there, it would be for the year, if they wanted to change it, it would be for the year after, it would not affect there. But I'm just thinking that, we did that with the one-way on the plains. Last year, we put a warrant article in.
But it wasn't for Kingston Day, that was for permanent, correct?
No, that was, it was one-way during Kingston Days, and the question was asked, do they want to keep it year-round?
Yeah.
And the majority of as I recall, didn't want it year-round.
Right.
So, again, there seems to be, concern with the dates still, and I'm just wondering if we put some kind of non-binding warrant article in, that would, people would have the opportunity.
And if everyone voted on the warrant article that would like to volunteer for Kingston Days, then we could have it any day we wanted, but we ran this Kingston Days with 10 volunteers, 10 people on the committee. We worked tirelessly to get this off. We had a profit. We have gotten a lot of good feedback from Kingston Days, and I think that we're more than willing to open up to whoever would like to volunteer and come volunteer and help us to create this event.
I'm not in favor of opening up the debate on a date, to be very honest with you, because we're never going to make everybody happy no matter what date we pick. And I think in deference to this group of 10 volunteers, they did a yeoman's job in pulling off an event that we were willing to scrap 6 months before, because we had such poor profitability, if you will, the previous few years, and had lack of volunteers. And I feel bad for the Charlotte Vincigueras of the world who tirelessly worked but didn't get anywhere because she didn't have enough help. And Stacy's done a yeoman's job in pulling this together when making $10,000 when we, in a couple of years back, we didn't make any, never mind $2,000. So I feel compelled to support her and the group that she had put together, and to go with the date of September 6th, 7th, and 8th. We're always going to have competition from other events. I don't care what weekends you pick, you're going to have competition from other events. Our own museum went ahead and used the day anyways. I mean, and that's okay too, because now we have an event in August, an event in September, and now an event in October. If we have the participation on those 3 dates, we invite the Republican Committee to come to all 3.
As the selectman's rep, I feel like I need to really say something here. Stacy did a heck of a job, and I think everybody recognizes that. But I would like to acknowledge your concerns. And as Chris said, we're not going to everybody. So if we move back to August, we're going to lose the people that we just got for keeping it in September. And I understand weather was a concern. That's why we moved it. And then of course this year we had, a really freak hot day and this crazy storm. And so that aside, we understand the concerns of your placement this year, and we have talked about layout. I would like to address the perception that young people did not participate. From where we were, it was nothing but young people. They may not have been participating in buying tchotchkes from vendors or going to the political booths, but they were there and they were enjoying themselves for all of the other activities. So again, there was something for everybody, and I don't think we took away from the seafood festival, and I don't think we took away from the air show. My husband went to the air show on Sunday, and he went to the carnival on Friday and Saturday. So I think there's something for everybody. So I just want to say I appreciate, Chris, you allowing the committee to make the decision, since they are the ones that are putting in the work. And Pam, I would like to also say that I don't think doing any kind of online survey is going to get us the information that you are hoping for, only because the feedback that we received directly from the vendors was very positive, and they want to come back. Like, they've already said, we want to come back next year, right? So we had less room for vendors this year. That was by design. And so please come to the meetings. That's all I can say. Please come to the meetings. We kick it off in November, and we're going to be there every other week for months. So please participate. The only thing that I would also ask Stacy is that you bring up the topic of the
infrastructure.
And the infrastructure. And since we spent 2.5 hours or 2 hours this weekend cleaning out the trailer that was supplies for Kingston Days that the museum also uses, and I think we pulled up a dumpster for DPW because a lot of it was old and no longer usable. Yeah. So we need to replenish some of that stuff.
So with that, we obviously know we have some infrastructure issues on the plains, the electrical issue. There is concern about water, which will never happen for us for there. But we were hoping that we could use some of our profits to put in some infrastructure for signs and things of that nature, barriers that we have. So we do have some extra money this year. We can spend it on infrastructure for events, but like we did with the licensing, the music licensing, we would like to kind of start something that other the rec department, the fire department, whoever wants to have an event can use some of the items that we are going to purchase from Kingston Days, and that we can share them amongst the groups in Kingston that are having different events.
But by infrastructure, you're talking about the electrical panels that we need to replace?
No, I'm talking about signs and barriers and tents and things of that nature that everyone needs. So like, you know, to do a beer garden, we need snow, like if we need snow fence, but we use snow fence, but there's other fencing that we could get that would be much easier to use. It can come with posts that are easier and segregate that area. A quick estimate is like $300 to $400 for like 100 by 100 space that we could get for a fence with posts that we would allow other committees or departments to use for their events.
Can I make a suggestion that you bring that up at a department head meeting? Because that would be a good place to talk about the needs of some of the other organizations in town to say, okay, yeah, we need this, and you know what I'm saying, to kind of coordinate that effort so that others are aware and maybe they can contribute as well from a different perspective and budget.
Right, well, I think that we were thinking, yeah, for budget, but I don't know that this is the year for that, so I think the point, the request is, can we use some of that, coordinating with the other department heads, but can we use some of that profit to buy the, you know, Kingston event this weekend, you know, signs like that, because we didn't have anything for this year. And then, yeah, coordinated with the department heads, but
see what they, you know, put together a list of the things that we think in general. So music licensing, fencing, signposts, handicap parking, those types of things that are in general used for every single event, and then share them amongst the departments, committees, anyone like that. Right, I mean, we did make a nice profit this year, and we could use that money for future Kingston Days and for future events, and without going into a budget cycle for music licensing and those things, especially this year.
So what's our typical process for how funds are allocated from that pool of money? I mean, I know it seems to be typically there was a certain amount authorized every year to be pulled out. How is that amended, or how do we request that?
It's a rolling, it's a rolling fund. So we would just work with Paula to leave a little extra money this year into that account.
Right, you have to do, you put together a budget.
Is there a trustee board that oversees that too, or is that that's just under the purview of the select board? So
it's under the purview of the select
so if we were going to entertain any expenditures out of that, we would want it to come before us as a comprehensive list with estimated costs and what we're looking to do, and understand where our balances are at, and you know, make sure that before we make that decision, people understand that. You know, and I know you talk about profitability. I think it's great that you made some money. One of my things is I'm never really concerned about Kingston Days making a profit. I know you want it to increase so that when we hit those large anniversaries, there's more money, but for me, it's about providing the experience for the community and the opportunity for the community. So I think it's fantastic that you were able to make a profit on that, but I've never thought of that as my primary focus, but I understand you need to continue to grow funds to have the longevity of the funds and the anniversaries.
So we have two funds. We have the rolling, we have the Kingston Days fund, and then we have the anniversary fund, and so we take money and put it back into the anniversary fund at the end of every event, and then we borrow from that fund to host our event and then pay that back plus any profit. And then there is, within that rolling event, there is a caveat that if we need to, for infrastructure for future events, that we can spend it.
Okay, so I think we're probably ready to we need to discuss the item that's brought you here this evening, and I do thank the folks that have, you know, spoken about, you know, their concerns with the date changes. Like I said, the biggest driving force for me is I'm not the person volunteering, so I really do want to defer to the people that are organizing the workforce that really makes this happen. But I do think that any additional participation moving forward, I think this committee is very receptive to things that'll make it a much more positive experience for vendors and booths that have been established over the years, and we want it to be positive for everyone, so we really do, but with that, we recognize we can't make everyone perfectly happy. So I will move that we accept the recommendation to accept the Kingston Days dates of September 24. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? None. Thank you, Stacy. Covered the tree and the tree warden. We need to vote, so we are looking for a vote to utilize consent agenda for certain routine items, and we have an example in here.
Yeah, everybody's got the front page. All the attachments are with the original one, which is in the orange folder, wherever that went.
That's this one here, right?
Yes. So I don't know how you like that, if you want it. We were observing you still have to sign some of the things that are in there.
Now, and did we check on the doing any financial matters through consent agenda? Did we follow up on that?
You can't do the, anything that needs any discussion. You really should look at the purchase orders, for example. So we didn't payroll, just gave totals. The routine bills, and they're all would be attached, in the main one. If you had any questions, if I send them out ahead of time, you can remove them from that and vote them separately.
Okay.
But those things that are on there today can go on. The new hires that you'd already discussed are on there. Welfare vouchers are in there.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be a little more streamlined once we get used to doing this, and because we have anyone can, I think, in order to adopt a consent agenda without removing anything from it, I think it needs to be unanimous. And I would say that even if one I think for our processing, even if one select board wants to pull an item out to be discussed separately, I think they should have the right to do that before we move a consent agenda.
So we sign this, but then we still have to sign all of these things on here. So do we go to Susan's office? How is the mechanics of this gonna work? So we've received everything, we review it, now we have to sign it, and then we still have to go find this stuff and sign all of this stuff, right?
Which we're
we have
currently
to sign
doing,
payroll.
but I think what's happened is sometimes I've sat there and just gone through each folder page by page, and it's stuff that there's really no questions or need for discussion on. So if we know it's a consent agenda, we can look at it ahead of time, and then when we get here, if we have time even before the meeting starts, those folders, the consent agenda items could be passed around to be signed, and if anything needs to be pulled out, people can request it be pulled out either ahead of time or even just prior to us voting on the consent agenda.
So I guess my question is, and Paula, this is probably for you. So if I'm signing this saying I don't have a problem with anything on this list, right?
Yes.
So then why do I then have to individually sign everything on this list if I've already said I don't have a problem on anything on this list?
It's because the auditors want certain things with a signature.
So that's the question for Paula. So if what you have listed on here, and we could blow this information out a little bit more, has the auditors been asked if this is acceptable? For, if we say vendor payment manifests, blah, 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 and you give a date, and is this not acceptable to the auditors?
So the vendor payment manifest has to be signed, and the payroll has to be signed, but separately. But the welfare ones, we can get rid of the signature lines on that, if you guys are okay with that. And same with the pay rate changes. I can get rid of the specific lines. That's just our form. If you're approving them on that, then I'm okay with that.
And I think what was problematic, yeah.
Payroll has to be.
Why?
I think what was problematic to me is that we weren't actually taking votes to approve payroll.
But we're gonna disapprove it? Are we gonna disapprove?
Not as far as the Department of Labor is concerned.
So
what Laurie's saying is, Are we really just doing more work by
We're
having?
doing more work
with a
because
consent agenda?
we're doing more work on some of these items.
Two things, yes.
So my question is, have the
auditors
auditors?
specifically- They will specifically ask me, can I have a vendor manifest for whatever
Sure,
date?
right.
And they check that it has signatures on it.
But if it's listed on here and our signatures are here, why would that not be acceptable to the auditor? Has that question been asked?
I would have to file that in with the vendor manifest,
Oh, okay. Okay,
I guess. I mean, I would have to attach it with every vendor manifest and every payroll report. Weekly.
So it means more work for you.
I understand the intent of this. I just feel like in some instances, it's creating more work for sending everything around for review, and then we have to sign this, and then we still have to find it, and then sign it again. So, I mean, I don't know the easy answer,
And that's why
but.
this week I put, when we were doing that as like a sample, we put, it's the actual one, so I will need it back, but the vendor manifest and the payroll reports, and we didn't attach like the actual pile of invoices and the rest of the payroll. I just have it in my folder so that when I get them back, I file them. So that you guys don't have to look through the big pile. You have the list of what I paid.
I guess I don't understand, if we're signing there, why does it still have to be on the consent
And listen,
agenda?
maybe my suggestion wasn't appropriate for
Maybe just
our
for
local
those two
government, our
items.
local government of this size.
Well,
'Cause-
maybe just for
and I
those
think
two
my
items.
experience was deferred, I look over it when the county's doing stuff, like, because they have a $90 million budget and
Yeah.
numerous departments that are much bigger and 600 and something employees. Like, every week, those commissioners get a 3-ring binder that is essentially within a consent agenda. I mean, it is usually 100 pages at least of everything that's done every week. So I wasn't sure, I don't want to create more work,
Well,
but
that's a good question, though. So for these 3-ring binders, do they then have to go sign everything in the binder?
that I don't know.
Because, so I'm just trying to figure out, to streamline the process, I totally agree, but then to have to sign, it seems like then take it off of here. If we still have to sign that stuff, why is it on this list?
I guess I think the way I look at it streamlining is that we'll have a folder with everything that's in the consent agenda, so we're not piecemealing these 4 folders together at the beginning of the meeting and figuring out what needs to be discussed, and then we end up discussing everything because we're not sure what if, does somebody have a question about this? So we're going through each letter.
And I think you've done a really good job in the last couple months where we do discuss a lot of things. We never discuss payroll. Yeah. Because what are we going to discuss? I mean, seriously, right? We're not going to discuss that. And the vendor payment, because we were already discussing, kind of POs. Exactly. So I don't know why they either take them off of here.
I didn't create that.
I'm just saying.
It's a work in progress.
Okay, so.
Can I suggest something?
Right.
Can we try it for 90 days?
Yeah.
Can we just?
Well, no, I think the whole
or
thing is a
60
good
days?
idea. I'm just,
I think, yeah, what Chris
Double
said was
signing.
everything was gonna go in one folder so that you knew what had to be signed and what could just go. Like, there are certain things that might need to be signed that could go on that. Like, I don't know, like.
Well, human services, for example, right?
Well, I can get rid of the signature, each separate signature off of those, but, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something
well,
else
those
that
are,
you guys would have to sign, but not
we
really
don't
discuss.
discuss those either, because we can't discuss
It's not an
those.
option.
It's not an option, so I don't know, I'm trying to understand.
So it's probably a matter of, I mean, I know other boards and bodies use consent agendas all the time, and it does, when they're used right, they help with efficiency, and I think that's the whole goal of it. Maybe it's a question of what things we put on this list and which things are not appropriate for it. And I'm not sure what that is, but maybe that's what we need to figure it out.
Yeah, we can do more work on it. We can ask the auditors if they can substitute a signed dated paper for the individuals.
Like like number 6 on there, you know, I think that's something that for the example of the employee pay increase, fire department employees, you know, that's something that personally, I think we need to look at that individually rather than on it, because I don't know anything about it other than what's there, and so.
Right, and I think that was there because it wasn't actually an increase, he changed to a call.
The what?
The fire department pay increase one.
Oh, that was a call member, a per diem member, that's also gonna be call, so all those people have 2 pay rate forms, one for per diem, one for call. And so it was a per diem person that they hired, but became a call member as well, so we just had to create.
As you're explaining,
Yep.
we're for this and we signed off, and that's something that needs to be talked about, I think. And we do it in the past, but it would be in the fall,
Yep.
or if I was in today, it might have been in there today, I would maybe see it ahead of time.
We did things a little different we try to do it to go with that consent agenda, so it was done a little different this week. I didn't have my folders, we just had one folder.
I apologize if I came off a little, I'm just trying to understand, it's for efficiency, I totally get that. I think we just need to really figure out, get some answers about from the auditors, and then also figure out what really goes on here, right? Because if there's things that we, like the human services, we can't, you're not gonna know who the person is, you're not gonna deny it because we can't, so maybe that's the right consent agenda item. But as Chuck mentioned, you know, any kind of pay increase or something like that, we probably should discuss that, right? So maybe that's not the right. I don't know. I appreciate you guys doing this. It's a work in progress.
So we try it out a month or 2, or we don't.
Right.
Well, I think so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, so how about we'll go through the items on this week's consent agenda individually, and then maybe we can just refine it a little bit more when you get some clarification from the auditor, and then maybe we'll try it out at the next meeting to actually vote on it as a consent agenda. Okay? Let's see, we have changes to health insurance options.
So I gave all of you, like I made a little packet.
Yes.
So we currently have 2 health insurance choices. One is Blue Choice, and one is Access Blue, New England. That is the cheaper insurance, the Access Blue that we offer, and that is the one, the single person one, is what the town pays 100% of. So it's like $10,778. And then the Blue Choice is the more expensive one. It offers more. That is going away. I don't know if it's Blue Cross that's taking it away or Health Trust isn't offering it, but they made us aware that it's going away. So they gave me 2 other options for it. And what we do to cover, since we pay the full for a single person for the Access Blue, we pay 75% above the single person for all the other plans. And so in this, I just have to have approval to tell Health Trust which one we're gonna change to, so that when it comes to open enrollment next month, we can have that information. So talking to Health Trust, Access Blue New England, I highlighted it in yellow, and then Open Access PPO is in green. The Access Blue HMO, it's actually cheaper than our Blue Choice that we already have, and it's the most compatible to what we already have. It actually offers more. There's no deductibles, there's no referrals, there's a lot more that they offer than what we currently have under the Blue Choice. And then the Open Access PPO is still cheaper, but it doesn't offer as much as the Access Blue. Health Trust said that Access Blue New England is their most used health insurance plan from other towns.
So I know you're saying that they're gonna offer a lot more stuff, but there's gotta be something that somebody's losing. Nothing gets cheaper without taking something.
It's,
But it seems like we don't have an option for that plan.
I gave you those pages.
Yeah, I was gonna, for me to make a vote on something as important as this, I have a lot of reading to do.
No, I needed to give it to you guys, so, and I marked which one of these packets offers what.
Which one do you suggest?
I suggest the Access Blue New England HMO. I looked at it, I currently have the Blue Choice, and this gave more options. There's no deductibles. You can go anywhere to a doctor as long as it's in network, without paying extra. You don't get penalized. I have a different report that I can.
I haven't read the details, but I mean, that should also be the case with open access, because the PPO part of it usually...
It is, but it isn't.
Okay, because that usually denotes that you don't need referrals, you can, pick and choose your providers.
Yep.
So I guess I know it's work for you, which I seem to like creating. I would really like, your deep dive into it and kind of a synopsis of if you can identify any benefit that you feel that may be getting lost by that option not being there, and really highlighting the major choices. I mean, I do like that it has the stuff in here. I've seen it with other insurance companies that different families on the different plans and the different costs. But, as somebody who's, battled with insurance companies and spent a lot of time fighting for things that I felt my family should have received without having to fight with them. Yeah. Kind of a topic near and dear to my heart. So I definitely know I need a lot of time to dive into this and really look at it. But if you could come up with not just what they tell you is the comparables or the pros and cons or the differences, but if you can identify some and lay that out to us.
From what we had to what the new ones are, you mean?
Yeah, just from that, and then just between what our two choices are right now, because it sounds like the one we previously had is not an option. It's going away. They will not offer it anymore.
Yeah, no, we have to get rid
But
of it.
I would still like to identify employees need to have a heads up that if there's any type of benefit, I don't care how small it is, or if it's incredibly rare and only applies to potentially one family in our town, they need to know.
Yeah.
Paula, when is open season?
Enrollment?
Yeah. Sorry. Open enrollment?
In November.
So when do you need a choice? Because this has to be...
Soon.
What's soon?
Like in a few weeks, I would say, so I can tell Health Trust, by the end of this month, so I can tell Health Trust this is what we're choosing, because they just met Thursday to decide their new fees for 2024. So these are the 2023 monthly fees. They're gonna change obviously a little bit.
This is 2023.
Yeah, that's all they had to give
Right.
me, because they just voted Thursday. And then they'll be able to send me out our contracts and whatnot with what we're gonna be offering.
So at our next meeting in 2 weeks, we need to have an answer to you so you can get with them before open enrollment, not open season.
And so we should have, if they just set their rates, we should have 2024 cost estimates?
Hopefully.
Okay.
They just called me and said they were meeting on Thursday and to go over the rates.
Paul, in the past, as I recall, there were several options for the employee to take. And in this case, let's say the one that's
There's
the
only
open
been two.
access PPO.
No, there's only been two. There was Blue Choice and Access Blue. Blue Choice was higher per month because it offered more stuff supposedly, and Access Blue was cheaper, and that was the one that the town paid 100%, but Blue Choice is going away. So these two new options, we pick one of them to replace the one that's going away.
So
we have, I think, 5 employees that,
so
4 or 5 employees.
we're telling the employees this is the plan you get, whether you like it or not.
There's
Yeah,
no
again, in the past, there were 2 or 3 options, and there were different options with different money. Some might have wanted to
No,
pay.
they still have that, but they still can choose between Access Blue and the new one. just like they always did. But we have to decide what insurance is going to replace the one that is going away.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So,
As long as they have a choice, I mean. it's-
so they'll have
They still have-
they'll have two
They
choices,
always, yeah.
just like they had two
Plus
choices.
the dental, there's only one dental, so.
But
they
we
don't get a
have
choice.
to decide what that other choice is
Yes.
for them.
Yeah.
Right,
We have two choices to decide what that other choice is. Okay.
right, got it.
All right.
Because it is going away.
Okay, we'll discuss it at next meeting and hopefully get some more information and have some time to look at it. All right, new business and code enforcement officer position. We wanted to have some discussions on this to catch anyone up. Obviously, we did not. Due to some budget constraints and kind of to test the waters to see how we could get by again with a part-time code enforcement. We decided not to fill that vacancy as it was a high salary position in order to help some other budget shortfalls. We're finding that the town is busy enough that we need additional hours workload down there, and I think a couple options have come up, and that is either pursuing filling that position full-time again, which I know the board had kind of come to a consensus where if we were to move forward, it would be at a different salary range. So we set some restrictions there. In the past, I know we had some discussion, and some additional ideas came up that we may want to entertain. Instead of going back to a full-time position, but we'd have to go to warrant article to get the town's blessing to do this, that we create a full-time permitting clerk position while maintaining a part-time building inspector, and then we have separate full-time clerks for permitting and assessing. And there's a possibility that that person would be the point of contact coordinating all the building inspectors and permitting aspects, so that there would always be somebody at that window to answer calls and or speak with members of the public, and not pulling away from all the assessing duties, because it seems like there's just too much workload for that one clerk position, to the point where, you know, we had talks about finding an additional part-time person to alleviate that workload. So this is a potential option where if we took it to voters, that to have a full-time and split those positions, that would allow the person in assessing to dedicate additional time to things that Susan had needs for, and then we'd have somebody that could fill that role in the public's demand for somebody to always be there or to speak to. So open to discussions if we want to discuss the pros and cons of either, and maybe how we want to proceed.
Well, my opinion is I think we need to get a part-time building inspector now. I don't think we have the joy of continuing on. It's going to take a month to get the applications out and do, you know, whatever it's going to take to try to get somebody certified. I just think that there's, you know, inconsistencies with the times and as the discussions we've had, and we really do need somebody that hopefully is certified and can do the job. And then we can, as we go along, figure out maybe that other option of, you know, an internal person there. I think code enforcement, other than if it's a part of the building department, which a couple of them that are going on now are, I think that's, to me, that's just secondary at the moment. And with that, I did speak with the town manager for the town of Raymond, and they are, because they had an advertisement on the website, the state website, that they were looking for a part-time building inspector. Well, they have hired a part-time building inspector who is certified, which was unbelievable at the time, but they do have a fellow who is ICC certified as a building inspector. And the town manager, of course, they're going to get him hired, but he was going to speak with this fellow to see if in fact, if it's part-time over there, does he really want more hours? Is it something that, you know, maybe be able to, even if it's a temporary part-time building inspector, be able to come over and get involved with us over here. So I don't know how that will work out, but the information is out there. But, you know, they found one and they got one that's certified. I'm not sure where he lives. Just And the salary range is 31 to 35 an hour. So that's still back up, to where we were, a little bit less than where we were at. But anyway, it's part-time, so it's not, like a full-time thing. So anyway, that's just, I'll wait to hear from him on that to see, but I do think we've got to, in my opinion, we can't procrastinate with this anymore. We really have to get the applications out, and at least see what's out there. I mean, maybe there isn't anybody. If it's a part-time position, so down the road, if we want to change it sometime, we can, but that's what I think we should do now.
I guess just my concern is it is a current full-time position for the town, so if we're hiring somebody, they would need to understand that it could only be long-term if approved by a change to the voters to make it part-time, or if they were going to segue into the full-time. We have an interim building inspector that we did, but for us to post a position, we technically don't have a vacant permanent part-time position. We have a full-time slotted position that we've filled on an interim basis.
And that hourly rate, Chuck, I didn't do the math, but I'm thinking back to some other things that I worked on, and I think that brings it to an annual salary of somewhere along the lines of what the town had approved for an annual number.
68,000.
There you go. I was thinking it came in around 70, so which is significantly less than what we had hired a person at, and it's within the range I believe that the voters had supported. So, I appreciate the discussions that we're having. I really would like to find a way to get more support administratively at the office level, but I still have to say that I would be more in support at this point in time of reopening the search for a full-time building inspector / code enforcement officer. I think, contrary to what we heard earlier, I really think that there's enough, plenty to do in this town, and we need that support. So that would be my recommendation.
Well, I think Kyle's recommendations to us were valid, and I think we need more support in the office than we do a full-time building inspector, code enforcement officer. And I think from what little I've seen in my search through the wage matrix process, I look at other towns around us, and they have a lot more support staff in assessing, in the selectman's office, in land use office than we have. And that would make a huge difference. It concerns me that if we don't have the type of volume that merits a full-time building inspector, code enforcement officer, it makes more sense to get the infrastructure in place through staffing at the office level that would be supportive of anyone in the inspector's position. So I guess I'm backing off from the full-time position to some extent, because we don't have the numbers. I mean, I don't have any numbers in front of me to know how many building permits were processed this year, how many electricals, you know what I'm saying? We'd have to go through those numbers to see what the volume was. And that's with a part-timer, because we haven't really been, we've had maybe 6 to 8 weeks straight of full-time, and that was during the learning curve. So I'm not sure that we have enough information to make an informed decision. But again, my first instinct is to recognize the need for more office staff that can do a lot of the work in terms of permitting. Doesn't mean, code enforcement, as far as I'm concerned, we're way out of, we have not even gone near to what we should be doing for code enforcement. Because we get to the point where we either gotta fine them or tell them to move out of town, or court orders or whatever, you know what I'm saying? Read between the lines there all you want, but we're not, either we're not growing fast enough to merit it, and maybe COVID, it set us back, and I think it did, because there are a lot of projects that would have gone through 2-3 years ago aren't there on the drawing board right now.
Well, and the fact that one of the big ones coming down the pike apparently has pulled out, and we don't know what that might mean, but I mean, That project was gonna take a lot of somebody's time. Now, that doesn't mean that there aren't other things out there, like the 800,000 square foot distribution warehouse hasn't started to be built yet, but once it is, that's gonna take someone a lot of time.
But they're still wrangling on access on 125, is that correct?
Well, they're still working their way through their list of conditions, which is why they haven't started construction yet. So, and the Route 125 issue is still one of the open issues, yes.
Dennis just called today to say that he had reviewed the septic plans out there to send into the state. Dennis Quintel, just so at least they're doing that much.
And you know, and it's, we have a position that was created, approved by the voters, that they recognize the need for. And normally I'd say, hey, that's what they voted for, that's what they're getting. But recognizing that we absolutely have a deficiency in the amount of support and clerical staff to manage assessing and permitting and fully support them, they need to be done. And the reason I'm really open to this is because we do have a budgeted amount of money that I think that if we went to the voters and did a proposal of continuing with a part-time inspector, you know, with the hours needed based off of a rate of pay, that I think we could fully fund another full-time clerk's position with benefits included out of that full-time salary and benefits that we had already had allocated. And I think we would alleviate the burden in the assessing and the other things that Susan has in the pipeline for the select board's office that she needs additional help for. But then it would also dedicate a person that's not being pulled in multiple different directions that could really service the public for the permitting aspects. And I think if you had that kind of command and control aspect, and you know, I think one of our conversations with Kyle, I think he put it best, is that he may be a general contractor and has run a lot of businesses, but he know the person that controlled the flow and actually ran the business was the office administrator. So that having that person there 24/7, or you know, 5 days a week to answer any call that comes in, respond to any email, so people at least get an answer. That's, you know, I think that's the biggest hold of people if they don't get something. And I just, looking at, I think if my concern is that we fill this with a full-time inspector position, I'm not sure if the town is going to have an appetite this budget cycle. We couldn't change the part-time to full-time land use administrator position. It got voted down, and that was a very small increase in our budget. I don't know if they're going to warrant another position in this voting cycle. So if we could propose something that creates a couple solutions and is still within the already amount that we have budgeted, I think that'd be a more efficient use of our funding and resources.
So we have the money is there. It has a job description for the money. So if we went to a warrant article, it's a matter of changing the name of it. There would be no dollar value to it. It would be a matter of, as far as getting it passed, it would be a matter of changing the title of what it means. Full-time building inspector, code enforcement. But now we want to do a part-time building inspector and a full-time clerical person.
I think we'd have to put a dollar amount to, I think we'd have to look at what we're budgeted for that position, and then we would have to craft, if we were going to propose this to the town, we'd have to craft a warrant article that set a salary range for the building inspector and set a salary range for the full-time permitting clerk position with the benefits that's within that. And we could say, you know, this would be the salary range for this one, this would be the salary range of benefit cost for this one, ultimately with a total cost for both positions of this, which is within the budgetary constraints of what was already budgeted for the single position. And I think you'd want to map it out as that to show.
But again, just me, that's great, but that's 5 or 6 months down the road, if in fact it gets approved. So, I mean, I still...
Kyle is committed through December.
I understand. I'm not concerned with what...
Right, but January, February, March, we're exposed.
Right, well...
Absolutely correct. And it's going to take, if you go... We could go for the part-time building inspector for January, February, March, but we have to start advertising soon. Because the cycle to meet and interview is going to take some time. Haven't done that a couple times before.
Yes, Phil.
Forget the tree warden.
So you don't want the tree warden, but you want to be a building inspector?
No.
That's
As someone who's been affected by not having a code enforcement officer, I can tell you that it is a giant pain. You know, I get a call about someone paving a driveway without a permit. I go down there. I have to drop everything to do that so I can catch these guys because they like drop out of the woodwork like ninjas to do this without a permit. And they don't have a permit, so what do? Well, go get a permit. And what do? They go get a permit. And I've dropped everything. I've wasted 2 hours of my day going and chasing some scumbag paver down who was banking on the fact that he wouldn't get caught. And there's no recourse. We haven't made anybody rip up a driveway. The reason that the full-time code enforcement officer position was instituted is these things come in waves. And at the time, we were dealing with 2 developments that were not following the rules at all, just snubbing their nose. There's still numerous developments that have not done what they have promised to do in their site plans. Have not. Trees don't get planted, things don't get put in, things get taken out. In a lot of those instances, we had to go to court. And the town prevailed because we had very good notes, very good recollections, and there was a lot of legwork put in to make sure that we won. That takes a lot of time, and you're sitting in the position of the people who did the work to make us win in those cases. That was the impetus behind getting a full-time code enforcement officer. I don't know what the plan is right now, but there were obviously legal issues with having the chief of police go down and, you know, bust people for having too many junk cars in their yard or something like that. But it also, a lot of people have stepped up to cover down on not having someone to do that. A lot of people have gone outside of their roles and beyond their job descriptions to fill the void left when that vacancy came available. I think this decision is being made in a vacuum with the belief that everything's running hunky-dory at the moment, and it's not. I mean, I don't have the bandwidth to go and catch people paving their driveway for no recourse whatsoever. It's a waste of time. And I think some of the other inspectors feel the same way when they're going to get these guys. And all it will take is one of these new developments, a new project or something like that to put us in a position where we have nobody to take care of it. And I understand the office staff and the things like that, but a lot of this is the work that the code enforcement officer before he left was doing. You know, there are a lot of roofers who now know that they can't come to Kingston without a permit. Eventually they're going to figure out no one's going to catch them, and they're going to go back to their old ways. And as the economy gets worse, people are looking to cut corners wherever they can. I'm not trying to bust anyone or do that, but for me, the big thing is when someone comes here and makes a site plan agreement, they made a deal with the town that they would fulfill certain obligations to the town, and this town has been notorious about being horrible at holding them to account on that. And it's a waste of time to have a planning board to go through all these exercises, to be in these 4-hour meetings, and to have it all matter for nothing. And I just think that when you have someone who's in that role, yes, probably the building permits that are coming before the building inspector do not warrant a full-time building inspector. That's why it was a hybrid position, a building inspector, code enforcement officer, because there is a backlog of site plans that need to be checked up on, if for nothing else other than the stormwater requirements. So our stormwater permit is getting more and more stringent every year. And eventually it's going to come to the point where we have to take enforcement action. I have no authority to take enforcement action, nor do I want it. But the site plans, every single one of them have a stormwater plan that they agreed to. And I can tell you that at least 40% of them, just along 125, are not in compliance with what they agreed to.
And that one item, that MS4 requirement, the stormwater permit, was one of the key items that I remember, at least when the select board at the time proposed that position. Well, you were there, and you were on the board at that time, Phil. And having someone who could, you know, deal with those issues and make sure that those requirements were being held and met and followed up on was one of the key components of that position.
And I guess knowledge of the position, I had kind of gone to you for some historical perspective on it and articles and stuff that were submitted. It seems contrary to me, like when it was stated that this would not be a position that took anonymous complaints or was driving around looking for problems. It would only take issues that were brought and somebody was willing to put a name to it. Like, I have a problem with this and I want you to investigate it. So somebody randomly going out reviewing site plans seems contrary to what was proposed at the town when that was done for the code enforcement side. And I understand from the planning board side, I've always found it very frustrating. Things get to a point, gets referred to selectmen, and then it either sits forever. I mean, I think a lot of the problem over the years has been when it comes time for the selectmen to impose fines or actually take substantial action, it's just sat. And then it gets deferred back to a board, and then they can't do something, and then usually we're taken to court and then have to defend ourselves, as opposed to imposing fines or injunctions. Or, you know, I always look back at that site plan. The first site plan I made a motion to revoke was ECSI. You know, hazardous materials, waste in the watershed. They never finished their stormwater management. They never did, you know, finished all that stuff. But the planning board revoked the site plan, and then that business continued operating, you know, for 3.5, 4 years, like nothing had ever happened, you know, unless the town is willing to take a stance that if this planning board revokes a site plan, unless we're willing to put up Jersey barriers and restrict their access to it, there's no teeth. Just like you said, if there's no repercussions, what's to prevent them from, you know, not doing what they're supposed to?
And it takes someone being there, you know, doing the legwork and making sure that we have legal standing to enforce our will, you know, when there's a violation of a site plan. I would disagree with you, though. I wrote a letter to the editor to the Carriagetown News regarding, you know, this Warren article, and the stormwater was one of the primary things. And I don't think it's random for the town to be checking to make sure you're honoring your end of the agreement. I think that's the town's job. And I think these things languish on the vine because you guys are busy. You have lives, you have other things going on. You're not full-time administrators of the town. And that's why there needs to be someone who is carrying the water on this, doing the investigation, writing down the dates when these conversations took place, and all of these boring, horrible things that take forever and are awful. But that's what makes you win in a court case. That's what makes you prevail when a court order comes down and tells someone there was a business in town that we had to go just line by line of all the times we talked to them and did this and did that, and we got an injunction from a judge, and they suddenly were very cooperative and wanted to work with us. And it's a lot to ask of you, and it's a lot to continue to ask of inspectors who really aren't compensated for it. And I mean, I do it when I have the time, but I'm not dropping everything to go catch someone paving a driveway. I know technically that's my job, but there's really no recourse, so why am I in a rush to go there and get them? And if we're not going to have someone enforcing the rules, why are we having the rules, I guess is my question on it.
Phil, when it comes to the stormwater permit, is there a structure included in that for inspections that have to be done, or is it pretty much up to the town to keep an eye on things?
So the town is ultimately responsible for everything that happens within our jurisdiction, to the tune of $230,000 a day if they find us in violation. Now, our permit is government at its finest, where it's just mission creep. Every year, just a few more things get added onto our plate that we're responsible for. And we're in year 6 right now of our MS4 permit. Looking at year 10 is where, because we're doing water testing now, and eventually we're going to have to go up the stream and figure out where these violations are coming from. Where is all this nitrogen coming from? Where is all this stuff coming from? Well, when we find them, what are we going to do? Send them harshly worded letters and just hope for the best? I mean, that's, you know, we're going to need someone on the pointy end of the spear there, and it's not going to be a policeman. It's going to be someone who has to do the investigation to figure out what's going on there. And, you know, that would be one of the roles for the code enforcement officer, is to be doing that.
Okay, thanks. No, I think it's veterans have generally focused on, and I know you brought up the concerns about the code enforcement stuff as well, Glenn, and I think a lot of our discussions have centered around the building inspector portion of it, and I'm guilty of, you know, kind of forgetting about that. The code enforcement was a large piece of the creation of that position.
And when the role was filled this last time, I think that person gravitated more towards the building inspector portion of it, so some of that did go by the wayside, but it was very helpful to have someone to call when there was a complaint that was, had a name attached to it, and like, you know, it's not, hey, you, can you go check this out? Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Thanks, Phil. Thank you.
Well, I made it easy.
If we go and we look for full-time, which is what the voters agreed to, right, and that we had, but we don't. You know, I'm really torn because I really think having a permitting clerk is vital, because they're a belly button, they're a person who can coordinate with all the other inspectors, and it frees up Tori. But then also having a full-time person to not just do the inspections, but the code enforcement is just as important.
And if we go with a full-time position to fill the position that's been approved and budgeted, we gotta start now.
Yep.
Chuck is absolutely correct on that, because
We
it's
do
gonna
have to start
take 2
now.
to 3 months in having a big enough search and doing the interviews and checking references to find the person that's gonna fit the job.
So I think we've identified a need for a permitting clerk. Well, right, we already kind of, I think we probably mostly all agree that a full-time building inspector, code enforcement person is needed. But if we also identify the need for a permitting clerk, is the next step a warrant article to see if we can get that?
Yes. Yes.
That, to me, again, makes more sense in the fact if we're gonna go for a warrant article for a person, although they turned down the planning board one, you know, who knows this year if we promote it. I don't know if the planning board is planning on doing another article this year in reference.
We didn't have a normal turnout this year, so you don't know, might have passed in another year, so it's hard to say, to gauge what would it would.
I think the planning board definitely wants to advocate for a full-time land use clerk, but it's always that delicate balance of the voters just told you no. Do you just try and wear them down, or do you at least wait a year before you propose it again? So I think there's some discussions coming up.
The attitude really is, this is something that we need, and we're gonna keep asking you until you can afford to give it to us. So I don't object to putting things before the voters, whether we expect to get it or not. And in truth, I don't think we expected to get the land use position full-time this year. But it was a way to tell the public, this is something that we need, and it's gonna become more critical as we move forward. So I do fully advocate that we support that going full-time again this year, and maybe we'll get it this year, maybe we won't, it might take the third time around. But the town has a history of voting no for a while, and then saying, okay, guys, you really seem to think they need it, we'll give it to you finally.
And no matter what, we're going to have some cost realization, because this board has agreed that the rate that we are willing to hire a full-time building inspector, code enforcement is, you know, it's not going to give us a surplus of money in the budget, but it's less. There is money that's going to be returned that we could advocate that, you know, there is a cost savings, because we as a board have already made a decision. We are not willing to hire at as high a rate as previously that position was filled, because we felt it was out of line with what was actually being paid in other communities.
And higher than what the voters had said they would agree, that they agreed to.
Except that you're going back 3 years, so you gotta take that, and that was one of the rationale. I know you and I can agree to disagree on this, and I appreciate that. I'm not, but by the same token, what we approved as a wage 3 or 4 years ago may not hold up.
Oh, I understand. I understand.
All right. On the road any further, we have to make a decision, so.
Well, I'm going to make a motion then, and we'll see where it goes. I'm going to make a motion that we reopen the search for a full-time building inspector / code enforcement officer, and with the description I believe that we used most recently, and with the salary range that we had most recently, before we stopped the search. We actually had applicants, and we stopped it. So I would like to restart that process ASAP.
Second.
And for further, I just want to say that I would just prefer that we make it very, I would prefer that we have a start date of January just to carry us through this budget cycle. And that will give us appropriate time to vet somebody. But that's not part of the motion, but.
Well, no, and I think, but with the understanding, I you know, given the fact of where we are in the year and the time it takes to get through a process, I mean, to have a start date of before January 1 is probably not all that realistic anyway. We've got holidays coming up. It's going to take a while.
Okay.
So I have no issue with that as being an understanding.
Yeah. Okay, then I'll have no other discussion. I'll move the vote. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
So I think another conversation, not tonight, probably needs to be had about the teeth of the code enforcement. As Phil mentioned, I think Kyle mentioned it as well. You know, what is the next step, right? After you've, yeah, the procedure, what happens after that, right? Okay, we've told them, and you mentioned it too, it tends to die here. So I think that's, you know, we should probably have a discussion at a later date on how that works and how it should work moving forward.
In the past, it has exactly done that, except when it gets to the selectmen, it dropped there. And in many years back, they didn't want to spend the money to hire a lawyer to do the things properly. I'm sure the planning board was told that, you know, at the time, yep, we got it, we see it, we'll write the letters, but we're not going to give you, you know, whatever it'll take to do that. So I think that once we do this and we get it going with it, we have to seriously give the code enforcement or building inspector the authority, or Phil for the paving, to have somebody go down there when they come in, because we do have now, you've changed it so the planning board has fines in there now, right?
Yes, a lot of the fine schedules have all been updated and clarified through review of council, and I just, yeah, I think the appropriate thing is that my interpretation of what happened in the past, it would come to the board, and then the board's like, well, I'll go have a talk with somebody or so-and-so, and I think we just need to, if we're going to grant people the authority to go out there and invest all that time in investigation, when they come to us, if that person has not followed through or complied or done to that point, we're at the point to make a decision. Either we follow the expertise of the people that we've hired and impose those sanctions and see where it lands, or or we say, no, we don't feel that's enough, and we disagree with you at the time, and we're gonna, but we have to get away from that system of, well, we'll give them one more fifth chance.
You know, just to, not to beat this to a pulp, but thinking about the additional support that's needed in the office, and I fully support that and agree with that. If we're not going to have that right away, but if we are able to get a full-time building inspector, code enforcement officer in the office, who hopefully can bring some order and some process to what happens down there, and that person will be there to answer questions, to respond to the public, taking some of the pressure off of Susan and Tori, you know, I can see some benefit being gained in that regard. It won't replace a full-time support person, but it might alleviate some of the stress and some of the pressure.
we still have to have a warrant article for a full-time position, assessing position.
yeah.
So Susan, please add that to the growing list of warrant articles for 2024.
I will.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it will help to have a little more coverage there, not that it's, you know, Kyle's been good, just that he's limited on his time.
Yeah, so I just before we put out the posting, I think everyone should have an opportunity to review it and give some more input, because we may want to put there like there will be expected office hours and dealing with public at the window, and we want to, the hiring process is going to be critical that we're consistent, asking the same questions to everyone, and that we understand what those questions and needs are for what we expect of them, because I don't want I didn't really understand that was going to be part of my job. Okay. All right, let's move on. Let's see, board business. Anything?
So I guess this goes here. So I met with a member of the subcommittee for solid waste and recycling, and one of the gentlemen has a suggestion on how to raise or increase resident participation in town decisions, right? He's concerned that there's not enough participation in the town, and he specifically mentioned Chris's comments about nobody shows up to the deliberative sessions, right? So how do you get people more involved in the town, right? How do you get them involved to volunteer? How do you get them to come to meetings, right? So there was this whole, essentially the suggestion is on the website, because that is our official place for business, a place where residents can submit questions or concerns, and then it goes through a process where it's vetted by the select board to, you know, the feasibility, the legitimacy of it, is it something that we want to take action on? So I told him, you know, he has grandiose vision, so I'm trying to manage that, but well, the comment was, because then we need a committee. I'm like, oh, well, but that's kind of like you're chasing your tail, because we can't get people to come to begin with. So how are we let's not have another committee. But you know, I think there's merit in this suggestion. So I told him that I would raise it, but I'm not quite sure where you guys want to go with it.
What's the suggestion?
Really, to have the little flow chart, right, for people at home, this great little flow chart. Probably, and says that items that directly affect residents identified by the select board are submitted by residents. So like if there's a place on the website where you can just submit your concerns, and then they're vetted.
So it's a digital suggestion box.
Yes, exactly.
There you go.
That's exactly what it is.
I guess my concerns are that they already have the ability to email, like any one of us, if they want it taken up in correspondence. What I don't want to turn this into is I already sift through manure pile on social media of people that all they want to do is throw out jabs and complaints with nothing effective.
Right.
I don't need another inbox full of it to go through, where there's already mechanisms in place that if they can't attend a meeting, they could correspondence that we take up currently.
But there probably isn't something, when you go to the website, there probably isn't something that says that you can do that.
Yep. Yeah, where if it says right there, and you know, we did discuss, you know, how it can be an invitation for a lot of vitriol, and that's not something that we would want. So we would have to figure out how to manage that with boundaries of, you know, this type of stuff is not acceptable. This is for this, right? So it's, you know, it's another avenue. Granted, I get we already have these other things, but it's another way for maybe residents to have their voice heard.
We can try it out.
We can try it, right?
The only problem I foresee with that, as you say, is that we're already short of time to take care of what we've got internally now. Is somebody going to sit there and look at, if we happen to get 4 or 5 suggestions that have to be answered? That somebody could make a suggestion and not get answered, but at the same time, you know, we're so short of people now, but who's gonna take up? And then it's gotta be answered, you know.
No, I get it, but the other side to that is, that's what we're here for, is to listen to the residents and concerns and questions that they may have. So we need to come up with another avenue for them to raise that.
I have a concern I'd like to raise.
Go for it.
I just want to, I don't know how,
was that, you know, we have to take a stand, you know, we don't allow, like when some letters came in, we don't allow other people to read other people's letters. I don't think it's expected of us to, you know, if all of a sudden, how are we going to decipher, what's the rule set going to be for what gets read into the record and what doesn't? I think you know, I'm a strong advocate of in-person participation. I think one of the major problems we're having with our society in general is the degradation and breakdown of in-person contact and communication, and I want to do everything I can to encourage people to come here. I understand there may be some people with, you know, maybe disabilities or mobility issues, but I just don't want to open it up for another place for people to just to be because it won't be a suggestion box, it'll be a complaint box. It will turn into a complaint box, and if it's not, I'm not saying it's not important. I'm at number 2. Seeing none.
If you'll indulge me, I just want to go back to board business. Has there been a follow-up, speaking of code enforcement, on the tree planting and the lighting at the self-storage facility?
I have brought it up to be put back on the board because I don't think it's not at tomorrow's joint session, but I believe it's at least going to be discussed on the 17th, because I think we're at a point where the board needs to, the planning board needs to make a decision of whether or not they're going to find that site plan is either non-compliant and they need to seek sanctions, whether that's revocation of the site plan. But I think that can has been kicked down the road enough as well.
Okay. Because I think the last thing that I think you mentioned to us that building inspector was going to be speaking to Glenn Greenwood.
So yes, and so my understanding is from the inspectors is that they can't seem to find anything that would consider the lighting to be in violation.
If the lighting isn't, I don't.
Yeah.
My last run around with the lighting was that it was addressed, that it would address several times, and that from the town's or the electrical inspector's position, the lights may not be fine, but they are, per what the plan says, actually they've adjusted them, I guess, lower than what the.
Well, I'm sorry, I'm not an electrician, and the electrician who put them in is also the inspector, and I think that's a conflict of interest. And I'm sorry, they do not meet the town ordinance, but we'll,
We had a code enforcement officer.
Yes.
He would decide.
Correct.
Unfortunately, the last code enforcement officer deferred to the other inspectors for advice.
So the planning board is going to be dealing with the site?
Yes, correct. Yeah. We have an application for, I'm just going to go through the folder. We have an application for facilities use. Conquer Self-Defense is looking to do some Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu open mat class on the plains for approximately 15 to 20 people on October 15th from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. The contact person would be Rick Sear or Paula Mahoney. Looks like it's been reviewed by the chief of police, the road agent, or the director of public works. Why does that still say road agent? And the fire chief. So it looks like they did not have any concerns with this. Anyone have any concerns with this use? Okay. Correct. We have.
For the planes?
There is a fee, but they haven't asked for any. Paula, you guys, they weren't requesting any waiver of fee or anything like that, were they?
I don't even know what the fee is. If it's something, if it's nonprofit.
Yeah.
It's like 40, but that's Kingston nonprofit. I think I'd have to look at the fee schedule.
Okay. I mean, there's no request. Look, now they're probably just going to roll out mats and. I know they've done a demonstration at Kingston Days before. Same thing. Yeah.
One of their open mats out there, it's not open to like really the public, it's just.
People want to see it happen, they can watch.
Right.
Okay. Nah, I think you have to go off the fees.
So remember we had the yoga people, right? I don't think that ever materialized, but we charged them a fee. So, we're going to. Yeah.
We did charge them?
We did. We agreed that it would.
If you wanted to do it long term, we were just going to come up with an established fee.
I think it was just a one-time $50 or whatever. I don't remember what the fee was. Right. But I think what we decided was we were just going to charge her one time. So this is a good discussion because I'm still drafting this facilities use permit or policy. So.
Then how about until we have that completed? How about remain consistent? We charge the same fee that was associated with the yoga.
Agree. I think it was 50. I think it was pretty low, but that's a tough one, right?
I mean, but we're working on provisions to adopt.
Yeah, we are.
So I think it's important to just remain consistent with what we just recently did. We have Bell and Flynn from Director of Public Works. So this is paving purchase order. There is a note on here. I don't have anything to confirm that this additional $93,416.65 over and above the original purchase order. I am attaching the original PO for information. I asked for invoices or quotes and was told that they did not want to give them to me yet, but it will be brought up tonight. So Paula's indicating she does not have enough information to reconcile the balances of this. Is that?
So we don't send
And Phil is not here to discuss, so.
Yeah, so let's. Okay, so we didn't get a money lose at the table, so until we can reconcile that, I don't think we can sign off on it. So they're gonna have to wait a couple weeks to get paid. Oh, okay. Discuss this.
Yeah, this is, the next item in the folder is a request for the town's annual dues to be members of the Rockingham Planning Commission. And it's based on of the town. It's $1.03 per head, and it's not our actual count, it's the state's estimated count, which is lower than our actual population, but that's how they do it. And so it's, I forget the number, but
Will be $6,568.
Which is what we put in the budget.
Which is, we have money budgeted for this.
yes, right.
So,
I'll move that we pay that. So moved.
Second.
further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? 10,000. All right, now we have an alleged violation from DES. 2 of them.
They're informational, that's been going on out there on Wadley, one against the other.
Okay, so I don't know if this would be appropriate to read
I
out
don't
loud
think
right
so,
now.
it's just information, it was
Okay,
copied to
so
us.
this will be in here for you to review.
Yeah.
No action needed by us.
Correct.
Right.
Guess that's just the envelope it came in?
Yes.
Okay. Annual dues request, amended agreement for Sanborn Head, the point of entry treatment project.
Yeah, I was hoping to have that before the meeting to sign off on. They are willing to give us an amended agreement just to cover any work they do on this grant work. They are currently reviewing the RFP that took me longer than planned because it has to include the whole contract and change orders and everything. So
Yep.
I thought, okay, we're gonna need Sanborn Head. They're having their engineer review it today. I hope to have it back in a day or so we can send it to DES.
Yeah, so Susan has been really buried in trying to get this pulled together, and because it's a state contract and it's government money, it's more complicated than some other things that we might do. A lot of bits and pieces that need to be part of the process. And as a result of that, at least what my intended timeline of getting this done, we're a bit behind. But for a good reason, it is what it is. And we're on track now. We should be able to release the RFP within a week or so.
I hope, if I can just get that back from them.
Right.
She said it's on internal review right now. Hopefully
Okay.
I'll have it back in a day or two and we can get it to DES as long as they don't have a problem with any of it.
Right.
We can go forward.
Right. So, we had sort of expected that we'd have an answer from, responding to RFP by the end of September. We're now into October. We only need about a 14-day window of opening for the RFP. Yep. So if we're able to get it out during the second week of October, we should be able to do bid openings by the end of October. And I mean, the goal is to try to get this stuff done this year.
Yes.
So, and I believe that is stated in the RFP, that's our expectation.
It is. I had by the
Yep.
end of the year
Yep.
have the systems in place.
Yep, okay.
There was just one other item of correspondence that everyone has in their folders. This has been an ongoing issue, and the board's already taken a position that there's nothing we can do to give them the relief that they're seeking.
I think that we need to write a letter, tell him that everything has been done with any of this problem, with that particular light, and that there's we can't do anything more other than.
I can pull up the one that we sent him the last time. It's pretty-
Yeah, we've already sent him a letter. He's just not satisfied with the answer.
Oh, driveway permit got approved.
Oh, perfect.
Nice.
You have a driveway permit?
Yeah. Mine. I'm looking to see, did it get approved?
There's a reference to that's about the POET systems, where if they paid attention to any of the hearings that are going on, they'd know the status of the point of entry water systems.
I can write him a letter to that effect at least, to say that that's in the works. Maybe make him feel a little better.
At least one.
Well, we have that.
Well, no, we didn't really do the consent agenda, so we'd have to take a motion to approve the minutes. Excuse me.
For which date? I'm sorry.
September
25th.
September 25th. I'll second that.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. And we'd also need a motion to seal the minutes from our non-public session earlier pursuant to 91A3 Roman numeral 2, Section A.
So moved.
All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? None? business as needed. And as a reminder, everyone, our next meeting is October 16th at 6:30 PM, so 2 weeks.
Well, we have the list from that sheet. Is-
Okay, it looks like joined the call department, so previous rate of pay was $0 an hour, so now the new rate of pay is $14.50 an hour.
Which is sad.
Which is probably why we can't get a lot of people on call. Any issues with this?
No, I just
Okay.
wanted to.
Yep. Oh, and we did have in here the part-time tax collector.
That was a late addition, that was in there, I put it, I added it to the list on the front, I think. It's the one that talks about hiring.
And I thought the holdup was that we thought we had funds, but then
She put it in as a temporary.
okay, so, that's right, because we did it as temporary, because if we go to default budget, okay. All right, so everyone recall that now?
Yep.
Had to jog my memory, so.
So she got somebody to agree to a temporary?
Yes.
So, yeah, that could have used some attention, but that was something that was already discussed, so that's why I put it in there. I don't know, I should put a little more research.
There was no consent of the consent.
There was not.
Okay, so with that being said, anything else? We are adjourned.